Okay, today is the Day of the Undead, as we're talking the Dark Tide 10 anthology, The Dead Shall Rise. And our guests today are two of the authors in that anthology, Armand Rosamilia and Erin Louis. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves now. So, Armand, take it away.
Yep, Armand Rosamilia. Thanks for getting my last name correctly. That doesn't always happen. And I am one of the authors, me and Erin and the late great Jay Wilburn. The three of us wrote a zombie novella each. We did not tie them into each other. That was one of the things when I talked to Joe when he first came to me and said, we want to tie these together?" I said, "No, let's just all write different things." So I hadn't written anything zombie in 7 or 8 years now. So this was like me going back and you know realizing that it's like riding a bike. Just kind of jump back in and do some zombie stuff.
Okay, so Erin, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Erin Louis, and I am one of the authors. And this is actually my first entry into zombie fiction. I'm a huge fan of zombies, movies, books, and stuff. So this was actually a great honor and really exciting for me to get to write my own zombie story.
Cool. Okay, so Armand, you mentioned that Joe, who's the head of the Crystal Lake Publishing, approached you to do the anthology. So why did you accept?
I've worked with Crystal Lake before. I've known Joe for a long time since he first started out, and I hadn't worked with them in quite a few years. I had been in a couple other anthologies and things, and for me it was an honor. He said, I'm thinking zombies, and I thought of you. Would you be interested?" And at first, my first thing was, no, I'm done writing zombies. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, you know what? I have something that I had started many years ago and was never finished as just one of those trunked novels. And I said, you know what? I have something if I can work on this. And when he said, all right, pick a couple other people you would like to work with, I immediately thought of Jay. Jay has written some really, really fantastic zombie stuff. And Erin and I, at the time, were working on what became Stripper Noir, a crime. We wanted to do a horror book together. We ended up doing a noir crime thriller together, and loved working with her and loved the story. And I love what she was doing. I loved her nonfiction stuff. That's how I found her to begin with. And so I thought, that would be great. It would be great to here's this newer author coming up who likes zombies, who wants to write zombie stuff, and that's kind of how it all fell into place. And luckily, we got Jay finished his novella pretty quickly, and so before his passing last October, so it was nice to have. And it was also nice to have where we weren't tied to each other. We didn't have to write novellas tied to a certain world or one another. So I thought that was a lot of fun.
Okay, so Erin, what appealed to you about the project?
To be completely frank, I was just flattered to be asked. Like Armin said, he kind of found me randomly on the internet after I wrote my first nonfiction book, and I, really encouraged me to keep writing. And fiction has always been a passion of mine. So once I kind of got past my nonfiction stuff. He really encouraged me to, to move forward and really follow that dream of, blood and gore and murder. So I was really appreciative. And then I had, through Armand, I had actually met Jay and been a guest on his podcast, and, was really impressed with him, not just his writing, but just him in general, just a really, really awesome person. So for me, it was just a huge honor to be asked to contribute at all.
Well, sounds like you did a good job. So congratulations. So, tell us about your novella, Armand.
It's called Zombie Diner, and it was so the original concept for it was me and two or three other authors many years ago, maybe over 10 years ago. I was asked to do a series of books. We were going to do it all set in one world, and then we would find a publisher and we would release these four different books. And so I wrote the first chapter, and I said, well, let's set it in a diner, the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, and then we each create characters within the diner. And so I wrote the very first chapter, and then one of the authors dropped out, the other one was taking forever, and then before we knew it, one of the authors had finished his book, a novella, and sold it to a publisher. So it just blew all of us off. So I was at that point I was annoyed, and I was like, well, then I don't want to do this anymore. And my Dying Day series was really taking off at that time, and that ended up being 9 books. And so I was mostly concentrating on that. So I trunked this for a long time. So when Joe came to me, my first worry was, what am I even going to write? Do I just write a novella set in the Dying Days world? What do I do with this? And then um, I have tons and tons of stories and books and everything that I've started and stopped over the years, especially, I've been doing this for 35 years. And so I was like, let me go through and see what I can cannibalize, basically, if I have an idea or a chapter or a scene or something. And then I stumbled upon Zombie Diner again. And when I started reading it, I thought, the idea is here. The writing is just god awful, but the characters are good, and the plot, I kind of remember where I was going with it, because I'm just a total pantser. So I literally sat down with it, and I think it was like about 12,000 words to begin, and I just started rewriting it from like the very first line was changed, and I had the old version on one monitor, and I had the new version on the new monitor, and I just rewrote, the entire thing, and and I liked it better. And for me, so that was the fun. It was the fun of, it's not necessarily like my old zombies. It's not necessarily in that world. It's just a brand new start to it. So a lot of it was, like I said, the writing was like, wow, that was awful. Like if I had read this in somebody else's book, I would have stopped reading the book. Some of it was so bad. So, but it still has a lot of my stuff. Still has a lot of dudes talking about chicken thongs and stuff like that. That's still going to always be my writing. Food is always going to be in my writing. So there's a lot of food references and stuff. So there was like the bare bones of what I've become as a writer now, which was fun.
Mm, yeah, food pops up in my stories a lot too. Okay, so Erin, tell us about your novella.
Well, like I said, I've always been kind of a fan of zombie stories. And my background, actually, my nonfiction, is about my time as an exotic dancer. I danced a little over 20 years on and on. And so a lot of my fiction is kind of either inspired or set in that environment. And I felt like, especially when it came to zombies, it was very conducive to that type of story, because it tends to be kind of, the club or that type of environment tends to be kind of sort of self-contained. Most places, clubs like that, are set out in an industrial type area. They're usually not in like busy places, unless of course you're in like Vegas or Reno or something like that. And so it really, just that particular setting just lent itself really well to zombies. And one of the reasons I started writing in the first place, was to help humanize the profession, and also kind of dispel some of the misconceptions and stereotypes of not only customers, but the people that work there. And what better way to illustrate the maybe unintentional camaraderie than zombies? So, people tend to have to work together. And of course, there's always an element of like kind of a frenemy thing when it comes to the relationships between the dancers. You don't necessarily have a regular hierarchy like you would in, say, an office setting where you have a real boss or an authority figure. The entertainers are mostly independent contractors, so you don't have that same type of authoritative like hierarchy. So I was able to really kind of play off of those different types of personalities, and yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. So my zombies happen in the strip club.
Yeah, it's interesting that you both chose the locations though of kind of an enclosed area because you went with the diner and you went with the club. So yeah, it's I think they both lend themselves well to the zombie stories. So okay, so the anthology is about zombies. So did you draw on the more standard idea of zombies, you know, the classic idea, or did you kind of put your own spin on it, Erin?
Oh, um, well, I definitely put my own spin on it. I took an opportunity to kind of incorporate sort of a pet peeve of mine, which is glitter. um, and yeah, I was able to use kind of the patient zero sort of understanding when it comes to zombies. You know, sometimes you don't know where they come from, or that kind of thing, or people aren't quite aware of what's happening. Um, so I definitely kind of put my own spin on, you know, some of my favorite type zombie, I guess, I don't know if you call them myths or legends. Obviously zombies aren't real. So yeah, I just really kind of incorporated my own experiences and, um, and yeah, some pet peeves and definitely some other dynamics. And I got to use some of the things that go along in the strip clubs. You know, you have a pole and you have a stage and you have cameras, you know, and was able to kind of give sort of a backstage look of how those things look and how that would play out in this type of like crisis situation.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say I definitely put my own spin on what is basically a typical zombie story with a bit of a twist at the end.
Oh, cool. So Armand, how did you approach your zombies? Are they
I
classic or did,
Yeah, for me, I went very classic on this. My Dying Day series, there's a lot of things over 9 books that happen to the zombies, changes and different things, and I did not want to do that in a novella. And so it's really about the characters. It's about um, some not so nice characters and some naive characters, and it was really the focus was always on these different groups of people that are coming together in this diner setting. So I purposely didn't do much. I just did classic Romero zombies. There's no fast zombies. There's no weird things that they're doing. Because I wanted the story to be more about this, ultimately about this family, this dysfunctional family that's together, and then the zombie apocalypse happens, and then there these other characters that are interacting with them over the course of a few days. I think my story takes place over the course of like 3 or 4 days. That's it. So it was. I thought if I added all this other extra, if I added more of zombie stuff and different things, I don't think it would have been as solid of a story to me anyway. I don't know how the readers are going to take it, but I know I got some flack back in the day because my zombies were different, and I had those. I love those reviews of this is not realistic, and I'm like, you're reading a book about zombies. What's not tell me what's realistic in this book, you know? That would probably be easier. Tell me what you think I wrote that was realistic. So for me that was the thing. I did not read Jay's story. I think it's a little too close for me still after 9 or 10 months um, to read any of his stuff for me. So when this happened, I know at one point they were Crystal Lake was asking me to If I wanted to do the edits or anything, I said I don't want to do any of that. I'll read it when I have the physical copy in my hands, and I'll probably have an emotional weekend of reading one of Jay's last things that he ever wrote.
Yeah, understandable. So, besides the zombie lore, did you explore any other themes in your books? Did you what did you want to explore with the story?
For me, it was a dysfunctional family. It was from the beginning. You have a father who is in the diner, wondering if the waitress is wearing a thong, and he's cheated on his wife, and she knows, but she doesn't know he's cheated so many times. And he's got a teenage daughter and a son who are just total jerks. And so again, it's a very, very dysfunctional family. They're on vacation in Florida, and they're on their way to Disney, and they're just trying to make the most out of it when this all occurs. So all those four characters go in totally different directions because of what is happening, because of the other people that they're meeting, because of their interactions with one another. One of them really loses it, and I had a lot of fun writing that stuff. I have, in fact, the daughter in it is Isabella, which is my middle daughter. And at the time when I first wrote that, she was 14 or 15 years old, like the character, and she was just driving me up a wall. I mean, she was just, it was awful. She was my oldest daughter, and she just was doing every awful thing to do to your father kind of thing. So that character, a lot of that character is her now. Thankfully, she's 26 years old now, and some of that she's not doing anymore, but still a handful.
Okay, so what did you want to explore with your story, Erin?
Like you said, how I've done with probably the vast majority of my writing is really kind of explore the dynamics, the relationships that happen in the club. And especially in terms of this type of crisis situation where, in maybe a different type of profession, you might look to your manager, to lead, the person in charge. And because this is such a different dynamic, the manager in my story actually has a pretty prolific drug problem. So he wasn't somebody that could really be relied on, but was somebody who certainly thought he could be, and tried to take charge, and that is, interesting for him. But I also wanted to explore the relationships between the dancers themselves. Like I said, there can be kind of a frenemy type relationship there, where you have people that are all competing against each other. And a lot of times that competition keeps people at arm's length. And in a situation, where you're trying to survive, or you're trying to problem solve, you learn things about people, and maybe understand that you might have had your own misconceptions about them and their personalities. And sometimes it's a really good thing to find out that you're wrong. So I explore some of that in this story, as well as talk about some of the community that happens despite some of these contentious dynamics that can happen. There is still a running theme of basically people that are brought together by stigma, where even though you might not, dig each other in the moment when the chips are down, because it's a group of people that can be looked down on by society, or people that don't understand them or misunderstood. I really wanted to paint a picture that they tend to band together when they need each other, because at a fundamental level, all of my characters understand what it's like to work in a profession where polite society might not necessarily approve of. And that in itself is something that can create that foundation of trust and necessary, a need to work together. And then of course there's zombies and blood and guns and a whole lot of cocaine and a stripper pole. So there's that too.
Yeah, deep but fun.
Yeah, it's kind of my jam.
Okay, so how did you go about contrasting a familiar setting like a diner and a club with the more exotic, for lack of a better word there, elements of the zombies? And how did you create the tension in the story?
For me, it was um, my Dying Day series was it came about years ago because I was driving A1A and I'm down here in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was gorgeous out and there's people on the beach and just the way I think and I just said to my wife I said um, how crazy would it be if like zombies came out of the surf and started biting people and she's like you're an awful person, you know, and I'm like so and then that idea kind of stayed in the back of my head. Like every zombie movie, every zombie book is this, you know, middle of a city, and you're in an apartment building, you're in an alley, you're in like, you know, it's dark, it's raining, it's the middle of the night, and zombies. What if it was Florida? What if it was nice and it was sunny, and all of a sudden there's zombies? So that was the idea from that. So when we started originally, me and the other people originally started with this, we threw out a bunch of different places and things, and we decided that uh, it, we didn't want anything that was like an apartment building. You would have people in the apartment. We were like, you know, let's have something public so we can everybody can write their own characters and just leave that if need be. So for me, I was like, well, let's do a restaurant. Let's do a diner. You know, and I thought that for me, I thought that was it gave us a lot of different options because it gave us customers, it gave us the manager, it gave us cooks, it gave us people coming and going and everything else. So we needed a place where we can start with a big cast. And so now when I'm writing it years later and I don't have all those people, I still have access now to all those people. You know, and it's a zombie book, so a lot of those people are like, let's introduce this person so I can immediately kill them, overwhelmed by zombies. You know, that's kind of the fun of a zombie book. Got to have a lot of blood and you got to have a lot of death.
Okay, so what about you, Erin? How did you contrast the familiar with the more fantastical elements?
Um, I would say that because the club and well, it's an entertainment setting, and we've all probably heard the saying, "The show must go on." And when anything happens, like behind the scenes, and you're in a setting where people are there to have fun, people are there to be entertained. Management, staff, entertainers, really, regardless of the type of entertainment. If something goes wrong or something it's not quite right, you don't really want the customers to know. In a strip club setting, that's almost exaggerated because you also don't want, you don't want the police coming, certainly. Especially some of them, can have some other darker elements going on below the surface. So it's something that the staff and management is going to really want to keep under wraps. So the way that I really kind of contrasted the zombies and the whatever is that at first they're trying to kind of keep it sort of, hidden and behind the thing, so that people aren't really realizing what's going on quite yet. My patient zero kind of looks like a drunken, like berserk customer. So it's really hard to tell that, something worse is going on until later. And although I can say it's not often that people necessarily get bitten in the club, it's one of those things where it's not really beyond the pale to watch somebody who's really upset maybe get drug out the VIP room by a couple of bouncers. Like that might kind of raise some eyebrows and start some rumors, but in your head you're not going to think, oh my god, I need to get out of here and start running, or I'm going to get eaten alive. So I think that was kind of my thought there.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that. So, what do you want readers to take away from your novella? Do you want them creeped out, or do you want them to think about it for a long time? What was your aim for readers, Erin?
Oh, me. I would say, like we said before, a kind of twofold. I wanted it to be fun. I definitely include a lot of humorous elements. as far as the way some of my people meet their ends. But I did want them to think about what, you know, the humanity that really happens in that setting, and to really humanize the people that work there and the relationships. So I definitely wanted it to be creepy and gory and entertaining, but I wanted that underlying theme of really the humanity of it all, put aside the sexual elements and that kind of thing, and really explore what happens when something like that happens in a place like that. Because it is something that's unfamiliar to, you know, to a lot of people outside of, you know, maybe a bachelor party or some, you know, thing. It's just, it's not a setting or an environment that a lot of people really know, or hear a lot of accuracy about. So in the middle of my story, I really wanted, or at least the running theme, I wanted to create that depth, that deeper understanding, to make people maybe second guess what, you know, they think or what they've heard about that type of environment before.
Okay, so Armand, what did you want readers to take away from your story?
I just want them to have fun. I'm a pulp fiction writer. I like to write something that's fun, that you don't have to think too much about. Everybody's been to, like with everybody's, whether they want to admit it or not, has been to a strip club, and everybody's been to a diner, whether you want to admit it or not. So the settings are what you would expect. Um, but then there's, like Erin, there's that little bit of telling a good story, having a lot of fun. I know she likes to write humor. I've written with her, and we've had a lot of uh, you know very cool characters we've both created when we did something together, with the humor, with the violence, with the um, and again with the book that her and I did together. I learned a lot from her nonfiction as well. I learned a lot about the back end of strip clubs, the workers, and those things. So it's she's not writing a zombie book that happens to be a teacher's manual of it, but she is giving you some knowledge. And as a reader, I think people want some knowledge about different people, about different things that are happening and stuff. I try not to go too deep, only because for me, I just, especially it's zombies, it's horror. It's, you want the reader to have fun. Um, and then you also set, as a writer, you set I guess in romance, it's that spice level, you know? So you have to say to yourself, do I want this super violent? Do I want tons of profanity? Do I want sex and violence? And what is kind of my heat level for this book? And you're never gonna, please everybody, but I think for me as a writer, I want to write a book that I haven't read yet. I want to something that I can look back and go, hey, this is a good story that I've never read so far. So I think that's, for me, that's more of people just enjoying it. Some people are not going to enjoy it. I've gotten tons of 1-star reviews in 35 years of doing this, but I've gotten way more 5-star reviews and 4-star reviews, because people know my voice as a writer, and they know this is hopefully going to be another book that they're going to pick up and they're going to really enjoy.
Hmm. So, what was the most difficult parts of writing the story? Did you get stuck with a scene or a character or anything like that?
For me, I got stuck on the initial bad writing of it. It was almost, there were certain points where I was like, maybe I just turn off this second monitor of this thing, and I just write. And it got way easier once I hit like that first 8 or 10,000 words of the original, um, because then it was like, okay, now I'm just writing this off the top of my head completely, and I can go anywhere I want with this. I'm not forced to do it this way, because there was a lot of interactions with the family that weren't really genuine. They were more like sitcom um, arguments, or people doing things for no reason other than a zombie's going to pop out on you. And I thought, you know what? I don't want that. I don't. This isn't that cheesy jump scare that you're going to see in network television type of thing. So For me, that was really that was the. It was probably I wrote probably half as slow because of all that, and then once I was done with that initial, you know, first part of the first act of that, and then I really just it just took off, and then I actually finished it up pretty quickly.
Hmm. Okay, so Erin, did you have any problems when you were writing the story, stuck on characters or anything?
I my biggest problem I would say is when I when I write about guns. My club happened to have a cache of weapons because it was owned by some not awesome people. And I don't really know anything about guns. And so it's one of those things where I have to kind of look that up and make sure that I'm being at least accurate to the point where, I don't want somebody reading my zombie story and go, that's not true. uh, but in that respect, I wanted to make sure that I was accurate. So I did actually have to look up some of that kind of stuff to see how that worked. And then one piece as far as how the problem actually started and how my character actually gets out of it. And the one piece that, kind of without giving anything away, there was some technical stuff that I really had to do a little bit of research on. I don't know if that's maybe not a common thing to have to research for a for
Yeah.
a zombie novel, but I did actually have to research some things, which I've actually found myself doing a number of times. In fact, when we were writing Stripper Noir, I had to Google how to, break into a sliding glass door, and then I started to worry about my search history and who might be taking a look at what I'm researching, because now it's guns and knives and how to kill somebody with a disco ball and things like that. So I'm have started to use a browser that doesn't record anything now. I don't end up in a list somewhere.
Yeah,
Well, they
yeah,
still haven't found your husband, right? They still don't know what you did with him. So
Now, I don't know what I did with him, so there's that.
yeah. There are lots of memes on the internet about horror writers' browsing history, so don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't think the authorities want to look at my browsing history either. So, especially when I'm researching how to cut a tongue out. So,
Like, yeah. So for me, it was the guns, because I really had to look it up. I know that when we were writing, Stripper Noir, one of Armand's chapters, he talked about a certain kind of weapon, and I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about here. So I actually had to look that up and make sure that
yeah,
I was,
yeah.
in the right word there.
There are a surprising amount of YouTube videos that will help with that.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about all that.
Okay, so what were your favorite parts of writing the novella? Is there anything that you enjoyed more than others? Armand?
I think for me, there's I don't want to give too much away, but there's one character from this family that just goes totally bonkers, and it's almost like the zombies aren't even affecting that person anymore because they've just lost it. And it was really fun to write that character and then having the other characters trying to figure out what this person is doing while we're all going to die. The zombies are coming. We can't get away from them and all this. And then this person is just doing something completely different that has nothing to do with the current situation. They've kind of it's almost like a midlife crisis on steroids kind of attitude that this character has. So that was a lot of fun to write, which was not in the original draft of it at all. That character was actually pretty boring when I read it through it the first time. And I thought, well, I got to do something here. You got to have each character unique, or why do you even have this character? And so for me, that was the fun of it.
Okay, so what about you, Erin? Did you have a favorite part of the story that you wrote?
I did, but to comment on Armin's thing, I know exactly what he's talking about, and it is probably my absolute favorite part of his story, in that respect. So that was awesome. You know, the whole thing was actually really fun for me to write, because it was, like I said, it's something that I've always been a fan of, and never thought that I would ever write zombies, probably not unless I was asked to do it. And so the whole thing was a lot of fun for me, but definitely my favorite was writing the part of the manager who, you know, is full of bravado, partly chemically induced, and sort of what happens to him and his whole thing, how the other characters kind of deal with him, because he becomes problematic, basically, you know, thinking he's helping and he's not. So that was actually my funnest part of writing. And of course, I do still have connections in that world. And so a lot of my characters are at least loosely based or inspired by people. And so as this book comes out, and will likely be carried by the club that I worked for has a store next to it, and they actually carry all of my books in print copy, and they will likely carry a number of these also. And so I'm very curious to see what some of the they read my story who sees elements of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, the manager character was definitely my favorite to write about.
Okay, so what are you guys working on now? What's next for you?
I have a book coming out every month until next October right now, scheduled. So I wrote a heist trilogy with another author, Tom Duffy, and we went back and forth trading chapters, and we actually wrote the second book, 63,000 words in 14 days, just pitching back and forth, and we had a weekend where I think we did 12 chapters just on the Saturday. So I'm a little ahead now, which is great. I'll have a bunch of different horror books out. I'll have a bunch of different crime thriller things out. So, and then, you know, I have a backlist that we are still promoting. We're still promoting Stripper Noir. This will be you know, The Dead Shall Rise will be another book to add to the promotions and everything once it goes live. So just, you know, you got to keep busy.
Yeah, definitely. So what about you, Erin? What's coming up for you?
I just last week had a novel, another novel accepted, which will be my my second solo fiction full length novel, which is still like super crazy exciting for me. When I was just quick background, when I was a kid, like reading was so important to me, and authors were like rock stars. So it's like every time something of mine comes out, or like somebody publishes something, or somebody, it's so like insanely exciting for me. So I have a new novel that was just accepted. I'm not sure how quickly they'll get it out or not. Put out by Hellbound Books. It's about a girl who sort of accidentally, well, she thinks she summons a ghost. Turns out it's a succubus, and this succubus has a tendency. She's trying to be good, but she has a tendency to accidentally kill people. And of course, they have they have an interesting relationship, and sort of a dark romantic kind of a thing, but lots of death. So that's what I have coming out, hopefully shortly. And the rest of it is just promotion. I had a novel come out in April called South of Heaven that I am kicking around the idea of doing a sequel to. And so, yeah, I'm just going to keep writing and hoping people enjoy and read my stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you both have a lot of good things coming up and things to check out for readers. So that's great. So I think we'll wrap the interview up here, and I'll let you two tell everyone where they can find you and your books. So Armand?
ArmandRosamilia.com. I also write live on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons. I'll write a new short story or a chapter to a book I'm working on, and people jump into the chat and we talk a lot. I'm on all the social medias, even the ones I don't understand because I'm an old man. But you can find me, just look up my name. You can find me on there and send me a message, and I'll try to figure out how to even answer that message on the phone. That's about it.
Okay, so Erin, where can readers find you?
Easiest place to find everything about me is my website, erinlouis.com. It does have links to all my socials, as well as a blog, which will have links to different interviews. And I also write nonfiction articles. And so I'll have links to that, those pieces too. And, of course, I'm on as many socials as I can stomach. The platform formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all those horrible things. And yeah.
Okay, great. So I'd like to thank you both for being the guests today. It was a pleasure chatting with both of you.
Thank you very much. That was fun.
Okay, and that's it. That's it for this episode, and bye for now.